Canadians lost a reported $638 million to fraud in 2024. Researchers jailbreak DeepSeek API and expose the system prompt. And a new SMS phishing scam targets U.S. toll road users. This is Cybersecurity Today. I'm your host, Jim Love. Canadians reported losing more than $638 million to fraud last year, according to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. Nearly half of that, almost $310 million, was lost due to investment fraud. Meanwhile, identity fraud was the most frequently reported scam, with 9,487 cases. But the report is clear that the real number could be far worse. The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre estimates that only 5 to 10% of fraud victims report their losses, suggesting that the true total could be in the billions. Regardless, we have some information about the types of frauds that are occurring, and although we might not have a complete picture, we do have a better picture of what's happening. After investment fraud, the most common scams were service fraud and bank investigator scams, which impersonate financial officials and resulted in $16.4 million in reported losses. Spear phishing, where attackers use targeted email fraud, cost victims a reported $67.3 million, while romance scams led to $58 million. In addition to reporting this data, the CAFC also has some useful advice on their site for people who have been scammed or defrauded. It's worth looking at. They do advise Canadians to use strong passwords, enable multi-factor authentication, and avoid unsolicited financial offers. On this last point, fraudulent investment ads disguised as news stories are a growing problem, and some of these look pretty good. In Canada, they impersonate the CBC, our national broadcaster, and do stories that try to hook people in. Now, these are appearing on social media and search engines. Are you listening, Facebook and Microsoft Edge on your news page? You are replete with fraudulent ads that are going after innocent people. Do something. So I got that off my chest. Authorities are urging Canadians to report scams to law enforcement and the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. And if there's an American equivalent to this or a program that I haven't heard about, please let me know at editorial@technewsday.ca. Glad to report that as well. Researchers have successfully jailbroken DeepSeek, an open-source AI model from China that made the news last week. They've exposed its hidden system instructions and a lot more. The discovery raises some major security concerns, not just for DeepSeek, but for all AI safety. Wallarm, a cybersecurity firm, found a way to trick DeepSeek into revealing its internal rules and constraints. CEO Ivan Novikov explained, "We convinced the model to respond in certain ways, breaking its internal controls." Now, the jailbreak suggests DeepSeek's safeguards are weaker than expected, raising some concerns about this and other open source models. But in reality, the concern really is, with the speed we're moving at AI, are we paying appropriate attention to security? The answer is probably no. The compromised AI may have, and I stress may have, even supported some of the claims that OpenAI was making about DeepSeek using its model to train DeepSeek. Though no proof of intellectual property theft was found, the speed of DeepSeek's development has raised questions, and this breach adds to that. Now, DeepSeek developers have since patched the issue, and Wallarm has withheld the technical details to prevent further abuse. But the incident highlights a broader issue. How easily can AI models be manipulated? And as new challengers entered the market, and as everyone's trying to win that AI race and get there first, we may find more examples of where speed trumps security. We have an exclusive interview with Ivan Novikov, which will air after the show. Just stay on after the credits for the feature we call Afterword. And Brian Krebs of Krebs on Security has done an excellent piece on the wave of phishing scams hitting toll road users across the U.S., with fake messages demanding payment for unpaid tolls. Researchers are linking the attacks to China-based phishing kits that are adapted to impersonate toll operators with alarming accuracy. Victims receive texts pretending to be from EasyPass, SunPass, or state toll agencies, directing them to fraudulent payment sites. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation recently warned about phishing attacks targeting its Easy Drive MA program. Victims are tricked into entering payment details and one-time passwords, allowing criminals to bypass even two-factor authentication. The scam has been spotted in Florida, Texas, California, Connecticut, and other states, and it appears to be tied to Lighthouse, a China-based SMS phishing service that now includes fake toll payment pages among its products. These sites are mobile only, making them harder to detect as scams. In fact, security experts are warning that phishing attacks are evolving. Criminals are now using iMessage and Rich Communication Services, RCS, to bypass spam filters, making these messages look even more legitimate. The FBI urges users to report phishing attempts to the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, and never click on unsolicited texts. But the bottom line, texts are a new attack vector. They are finding ways to get past screening, and we have to train ourselves and our users to be very skeptical and very cautious when they respond to a text, especially an unsolicited one. That's our show for today. Stay tuned for Afterword and hear our interview with Ivan Novikov. I'm your host, Jim Love. Thanks for listening. And now, welcome to Afterword. My guest today is Ivan Novikov, CEO of Wallarm, a security company that specializes in API security. They've recently done a major study on API security and found some major vulnerabilities, particularly in DeepSeek, which allowed them to download the entire system prompt and more. I hadn't heard of Wallarm before, and maybe that's my failing, but can you tell me a little bit about the company? Yeah, because you've hit me twice in a week now. I got a great study from you on APIs, really liked it, very detailed, very great. And then this press release today. So tell me a little bit about the company.
Okay. Wallarm as an API security company, we actually ran out of stealth back 2016 while Y Combinator inception in Silicon Valley. Since that time, we mainly focused on enterprise companies, delivering them AI and API protection tool called Wallarm. And since that time, we got like significant traction, more than 100 large enterprise customers all over the world. Still have a HQ in San Francisco since that time.
Can we talk about the study? Just because since I've got you on the recording here, you did a study and it said, the one thing that jumped out at me was it said that there'd been an increase in API-led incidents or I guess incidents where APIs were the key attack vector by 1,025%.
Yeah, the 1,000% we mentioned there, this is specifically related to AI CVEs, or in other words, vulnerabilities, published in 2024, comparing to 2023. So basically in 2023, we analyzed all the CVEs, common vulnerability numbers and bulletins. So we found only 39 in 2023, comparing to 439 in 2024. That's basically 11 times more. And this is all CVEs related to any AI products, frameworks, or LLMs directly or indirectly, right? Everything that we can attribute to AI.
And do you tie that into the growth in AI, particularly that there's that much vulnerability?
Sure, because again, we got more and more products, specifically open source product that were built and released to deliver AI in real environments. In other words, if you want to use AI, it's not as easy as just use some tool. Like in many cases, it's just like API proxy, such as you call OpenAI API and that's it. But then you need to manage data, manage pipelines, collect the data somehow, orchestrate this. And that's why you start to use some other tools to support this, what's so-called pipelines or workflows. And if you want to use your local LLM instead of calling someone else via API, then you do even more, right? And this raise of tools definitely pushed raise of vulnerabilities.
Yeah, maybe I'm asking the question incorrectly. I was doing a recording of our weekend show, and I said, mea culpa. When we were doing APIs when I was in development, we were trying to make them work. We weren't as concerned with security. I will confess to that, and I think everybody else will. But we should have learned over the years how big an attack vector APIs are, why is it that, and you obviously got into this business because you think that they need to be protected. What is it that keeps us from making these more secure?
Look, I definitely can point a few factors that contribute to that. But first of all, APIs, right? Not something new, right? And a couple of years ago, when we just started to run this threat stats report, by the way, this is our third year. So we run 10 reports in this way. And then we do it quarterly. So basically it's 2 years plus 2 reports, something like that. So what we found is when we just released first report, we tried to get a historical overlook. And we found that the first API exploit was detected back in 1998. So basically 25 years of history at that time, roughly this. So then we start to dig into it and try to find out why APIs became more and becoming more and more actively widespread. So definitely the main driver here is overall adoption, right? People want to run more services and connect them with each other. Before, probably like 10, 15 years ago, it was, if you can recall, that called Enterprise Service Bus or ESB, when SAP PIs, that kind of technologies were in place. So it was like non-gated hubs, right? Then it turned over to API gateways when everything was gated. And now, basically a couple of years ago, when we finally realized that API is the key, the most important thing for enterprise security, it became to unmanaged. So basically everyone can run API and make it available for pretty much everything, inside, outside partners, really depends on the type of the business, but not really manage that by gateway. So because majority of API became unmanaged, and if you can look at the Gartner report, they predict, if I'm correct, like 80 and 90% API, enterprise APIs become unmanaged very soon in 2026 or 2027. That's exactly the key, right? More things, less management, more security issues.
So what can we do about it?
Look, the fair answer is we have to overall improve our frameworks and overall development and then deployment techniques. It's well described in Microsoft SDLC, like guidelines, pipeline, and everything that happened afterwards is all about this, right? Ultimately, the problem is we need, as a business, right? We need to deliver something very fast, and we don't have enough of time to secure it properly. That's why we added firewalls, some kind of like external controls, IPS, IDS, all that kind of things, to try to at least block something that obviously can happen. The other problem is, and then we definitely have to do that. So to address this problem, we have to increase awareness. And I guess AI here plays a good role because now all the developers can just ask AI. So if the piece of the code looks secure, and get instant knowledge and feedback about this particular code, rather than ask security guy, and security guy run some scanners and tests. And so it's like a straightforward connect between who's building this code and basically all the security insights collected over the world. Even if it's not perfect, that's much better than nothing, right? And the other thing is overall improving our framework, development frameworks, API, application servers, all that stuff, because majority of them well secured, right? I understand that now I look like very old school with mentioning WebSphere and other APM product, but they were built for good. And it's a lot of security controls in the WebSphere that is still not allowed across all the newest management platforms and API and application servers. So improving frameworks, basically reducing attack surface while we're developing it, definitely secure a lot. And the other basically third component, right? If you just try to build this stable system, right? The third component is like overall knowledge and awareness, then like frameworks and reducing attack surface there, and built-in controls, in other words, or hidden in. And the third part is overall assessment and management. So basically, even if API is not managed, it's still important to at least know that API exists. And if I recall to 10 years old projects when it was just a few APIs or application, every single service or API or application that released were well documented with owner, with document called passport, right? With pretty much everything. Now, because development speed should be increased, right? We don't have these passports anymore, but we still need to make a list of them and understand who is responsible for this business function, because API is very tightly connected to business functions, right? They serve in essentially transactions called API calls, right? Or a bunch of them together, one business function. So we have to appoint this. That's what I think we should do. What's already happening with different quality. in different
Interesting,
places.
yeah. So let's talk about DeepSeek. What made you look at DeepSeek in the first place? And then what did you find?
Yes. Yeah. First of all, DeepSeek is ultimately very like flashy technologies that pretty much everywhere. So we decided to look into it and find out what's there, right? Find the difference and evaluate the performance of the model. And I want to have like very important comment here. So the deepseek.com or chat.deepseek.com, this is the product. Essentially, it's an AI agent, right? The agentic AI is like big thing now, which doing some actions, right? They still build based on the model that, by the way, available in open source, right? But the model itself that available in open source, it's not exactly equal to the product as a chat, right? In other words, this chat can search for internet, which is function, right? And this is the big difference between native LLM and native LLM security and what we do in the Wallarm, securing AI product that using LLMs, but in fact serving a lot of API calls and doing a lot of actions behind the scene, right? That's why I try to find the way how we can learn more about the model implemented in a very specific way, such as chat.deepseek. We found a way how to what's so-called jailbreak. In other words, how to convince model to respond for questions or give us technical data that it shouldn't. And that's so-called jailbreak. So we found that. Unlike other jailbreaks that were published or we will publish specifically in DeepSeek and other models, the usual jailbreak actually built to get some data, such as instruction, how to build something bad or respond with no censorship and such things. So our jailbreak is more technical jailbreaks that unlock model, basically tell us everything about the model itself. It's a little bit different kind of
Yeah, and the
jailbreak.
traditional jailbreak, you're looking to get it to bypass its instructions, to be able to
Yeah.
tell you something, how to build how to make napalm, how to make meth are the classic ones. Or in this case, what really happened at Tiananmen Square would be probably a good jailbreak. If you got past that one, you probably get somewhere. But those are the classic ones. But you actually got in and got it to really dictate what its overall instructions were and its overall model was. What made you think of how to do that? Because obviously the one way to do is say, print out your instructions or give me your main prompt. And by the way, just in case anybody at OpenAI is actually sitting there going, we're better. No, people have gotten the prompts from a couple of major AI providers just by asking for them. But obviously you tried that and that didn't work. And so what else did you do next?
Yeah. And then we try to build a way, like more scientific way, how to get at least some knowledge, right? If you cannot ask directly, ultimately you still can ask indirectly. So, and then we build a technique called biased attack when we put the model response in a very strict frame when the model should answer essentially yes or no, or between the 3 or 4 options that we provide them. The model cannot lie and model cannot give an answer. That's why it still start to provide some stuff. And then a bunch of code around it, how to ask many questions like that and get a kind of like you very similar to like binary search tree, the algorithms that help you to identify, hey, if the number is between this and that, then what? So if this is between this frame, then what's inside this frame, and then divide by 2 and so on. That's how we can get some basic knowledge. And in terms of extracting large text, such as this AI system prompt, then it took some time. But we did it and we posted the results to make everyone, first of all, check what's inside. And
You're a lot smarter than me. I need you to slow down. You went after it. Is this like password stuffing? You gave it a whole pile of commands to try and figure out which one it would break it?
Not exactly this. So first of all, so we will wait a little bit until full disclosure for this technique because other models are also vulnerable and we have to get some other models to get fixed. But essentially, it's binary search. So you have to find a way how to directly ask yes or no or between few options, and then based on that options, you can build your next question. And then at smaller chunks, you get into an answer.
Wow. And you managed to extract basically its prompt. What did you manage to extract?
That's a basic system prompt. So once you found a way how to directly communicate with the model in the way you want, you can extract pretty much everything that you want. And that's actually what we call jailbreak. And we extracted the baseline of instructions. So basically, when you put some prompt in a chat, this prompt or your query actually adds to a bunch of others, including policies and how to answer questions and so guideline that provided by developers. That's why the chat itself, AI product, that built on the top of LLM. So if you just download this open source LLM, you have to define your own system prompt, right? You will not find what was defined by default. And this prompt identify behavior of the model, policies, what it can or cannot respond. And so extracted that and also ask model some kind of like technical questions about how the model was trained. Was it like OpenAI API used to distill data? And we got some answers that we decided to also include in the blog post, which definitely not the kind of guarantees that it was used, because ultimately we didn't know how model which
I
data the
think
model
we're
actually
all
know about
pretty
itself.
sure that it was using OpenAI. You might not have found that. I've heard of people who've actually got direct responses from it saying I was trained on OpenAI.
Yeah, that's the same we did, right? We had direct response. Was it trained using OpenAI after jailbreak? And the model said yes, which doesn't mean that it was, right? And
Cool.
I can imagine that the model could be guided to answer like that just to get some PR around that and let everyone compare models and increase valuation. We didn't know. But that was the answer, and that's what we got.
So you contacted DeepSeek? Now, this is the second hack. They had one on their database a couple of days ago. They responded quite quickly from the sound of it.
So first of all, I don't think that it's second one. If you look at just X or Twitter, you will find more than a bunch of dozens of
Two that I know of.
I notified them. Yeah.
Maybe I'll ask DeepSeek how many times they've been hacked.
They don't know yet, but you can run jailbreak and then people have to. So overall, it's usual practice called full disclosure or responsible disclosure, right? First, we notified them, and once we realize that it's actually fixed, so we cannot reproduce this attack anymore, the jailbreak doesn't work. So we decided to publish this. However, because the same jailbreak we know for sure works for other models, so we decided to don't disclose like the details about that. However,
thank you. Yeah. Although I tried to jailbreak you on this interview and didn't succeed.
Not yet, at least.
Not yet. Yeah, I'll keep working on it. This has been terrific. Thank you so much. I think people do developers a service when they point out these problems. The great thing I think about DeepSeek, at least, is that they admitted it. I've seen far too many companies now that when they get notified of a breach or an attack vector, seem to deny it or go, it's not a big deal. So they seem to be at least responding well.
Look, at least they fixed it. So the communication flow, and so I'm not the guy who will guide them how to respond, but they fixed it. And is it for me? It means that it's high tech engineering driven company, and they fixed it in less than an hour or so. So that's a good velocity, right? The velocity that as a security researcher, I really appreciate. They really care about their product, and not that many companies in the world can do that. It's a very young and active company, a lot of energy, so I like it. However, all the other things, like to decide, we'll see during times how company will grow, how they will respond to other issues and security issues. And now, like the hype, and we know for sure that it's worth it. It's a lot of good tech implemented there, and they did a good job anyways.
Yeah, and as I said, this is a side project. This is something they did in their spare time. We'll take over the world of AI in our spare time. I think you got to give them a little bit of credit for that. Although I did say the one thing I did learn, and I don't know how much you've discovered in this in the work you've done, is because something's a side project or it's a proof of concept or, God forbid, a test project, we tend to not pay enough attention to security, forgetting that our test projects are often attached to other systems or at least attack vectors in themselves. So I think it's a good lesson for us all to say, even if you're doing this as a proof of concept, you have to pay attention to the security on it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And here is it for me, at least, like the kind of like borderline, right? If you're doing something in open source, right, and it's just available, then you feel free to do whatever you want. People take their own risk because they read your guidelines and it's bad. If you release the product, even free product, then you take some responsibility for your users. That's how it became to play. And I guess users understand that it's essentially run on the Chinese servers, and the China or the Chinese company have access to all the data. They can read this agreement. And so that's the thing. However, there is a difference between product, real product, such as chat or APIs that uses LLM and LLM itself. So in terms of engineering LLMs, they did an amazing job. whatever they use, this is for good, and it's good for all of us as a community. Now we have probably the best model, the fastest one, the most performance one, and like, why not to use the model? However, the product that make, the website and this app and so on, for me, it's still in deep beta, so that should be improved significantly. But why?
Okay. And as I've said, they have to take some responsibility, but for those of the people who are running corporate security or who have employees who might be on there, if you've got an employee who's on a 2-day-old AI and they're putting your corporate information on there in a server in China, it's time to take their PC away.
By the way, majority of this PC is built and delivered from China.
Yes. You can't. Yeah. What do you do? Thank you so much. My guest has been Ivan Novikov. He's the CEO of Wallarm, their company that deals with API security. They've got a great report out. We did a story on them. You can find a link on our show notes. Thank you very much. And that's Afterword. If you stayed to the end, I'd love to know what you think. You can reach me at editorial@technewsday.ca, or if you're watching this on YouTube, just go underneath, put the comment in there. I'm your host, Jim Love. Thanks for listening.